They told us the royals are flawless statues, unbreakable facades. But behind every gleaming facade lies a network of lies, omissions, and bodies hidden in plain sight. This is the story of one such body, one sister erased, not by death, but by silence. She wasn't killed, she was buried. And now, you will know it all. Watch this video till the end to find out why Prince Harry explains why his sister was always a secret. We all know Camilla Parker Bowles had a life before becoming Queen Consort. She had children. One became visible, vocal, and tolerated. The other vanished. Her name is Laura Rose Parker Bowles. Now she is just Laura Lopes. She was born in 1978, the child of Camilla and Andrew Parker Bowles. Her brother Tom entered public life with a swagger. Laura entered with a push. They made her walk while making sure she was invisible. She married in 2006 to Harry Lopes. Her wedding was attended by Charles, William, and Harry, and yet the world barely registered her. She moved through gallery openings and curated lists, not palace corridors. The contrast was devastating. Tom, the food critic, the media darling; Laura, the other child, whose name became optional in press kits. Why? Because Laura's very existence destabilized narratives that the palace had spent decades building. Her presence threatened myth, the myth of a pure, unblemished Camilla, the myth of a marriage born of destiny. They needed her erased. The machinery of erasure began long before she learned the meaning of a camera flash. To understand the cruelty, you must understand the scandal that changed everything. In 1993, the infamous Camillagate tape, a private phone call between Charles and Camilla, leaked an intimate conversation and exploded into public view. The monarchy tried its best to do damage control, but the trust was already cracked. The palace scrambled. The narrative had to be reconstructed, reputations remolded, threads of past lives cut away. The palace learned that when everything is public, survival demands deletion. Laura became one of those cut threads, not with chaos, but with surgical precision. She would exist only when safe. She would not be permitted to have a life that threatened the mythos. She would be a ghost in royal events. And every time she appeared, her name would be slurred from press releases or quietly excised. She became a living contradiction, a daughter of the Queen Consort, tied by blood to the throne, yet treated like an intruder. Her mother's past romantic entanglements, her early life, and her children are all parts of a history the palace glosses over. For Laura to be allowed visibility would be to allow scrutiny, and scrutiny could unravel everything. As she grew, she sometimes defied the erasure. Sources say William and Laura had explosive fights, not childish ones, but war. William blamed Camilla, blamed the way his mother was erased. Laura used to scream, "Your father has ruined my life," she is reported to have told him. These were not footnotes. They were bombs, but they never made headlines. Why? Because the palace's silencing apparatus was already in motion. Press secretaries, courtiers, and private secretaries were all instructed to minimize Laura, not as a courtesy, but as containment. Her face might appear in a photo, her name would be omitted. Her attendance in family events would be teased, but not confirmed. She became a placeholder, a glitch, a ghost. This is the threshold between protection and punishment. The narrative told you, we kept her private, out of kindness. But kindness does not require erasure. The protecting power structure demands sacrifice, and few are sacrificed as quietly as women in royal families. Before we get any further, you need to know something. We are going to tell you something shocking. Laura was once spoken of as heir material behind closed palace doors. Not in speeches, not in press releases, but in institutional planning. Documents exist, reportedly drafts of correspondence, where her future role was considered, then blocked. These drafts were removed, deleted, and denied. The erasure was retroactive. That is a secret they refuse to own. We know that every ghost has a jailer. Laura's erasure was not a natural accident, not an innocent oversight. It was engineered, but the question is, by whom exactly, and why just her and not her brother? When Camilla became entangled with Charles in the 1970s, the palace dismissed her as unsuitable, too ordinary, too experienced, too tainted by history. They pushed her out of Charles's circle, approving Diana instead. But when Diana died in 1997, the monarchy faced its greatest crisis of image. Charles, desperate to legitimize his decades-long affair, demanded Camilla be absorbed into the institution. The courtiers obeyed, but they did so with conditions. Condition 1 was that her children would never rival the bloodline. Tom and Laura Parker Bowles were the byproducts of a marriage that the palace treated like trash. They were not to receive royal titles. They were not to step into royal roles. They would never be framed as heirs, allies, or even secondary figures in the Windsor family. Condition 2 was that the visibility would be rationed. Laura would be allowed to appear at weddings, christenings, and carefully staged photographs, but her name would be excluded from speeches and official acknowledgements. Look at press releases from those events. Her presence is treated as incidental, a footnote if mentioned at all. The third condition was that the brothers, William and Harry, would be protected from her existence. The courtiers feared what her presence might reignite: rage over Diana, fury over Camilla, memories of betrayal. And they were right. Reports confirm that William and Laura despised each other as teenagers. William reportedly said, "She's not my family," to his friends at Eton. Laura hit back, furious at being cast as the daughter of the other woman. These confrontations were silenced before they ever reached the public. The silencing had a structure though. Behind Charles stood his private secretary, Mark Bolland, the man often credited with rehabilitating Camilla's image. Bolland specialized in spin, crafting the idea of Camilla as a loyal partner rather than a usurper. To sell that myth, the past had to be pruned. That meant downplaying Andrew Parker Bowles, downplaying Camilla's children, downplaying anything that muddied the fantasy. Laura's identity was collateral damage. Did you notice the tactic? When Camilla finally married Charles in 2005, her son Tom gave a public interview. He was charming, witty, quotable. Laura did not. The palace never put her forward. She was not coached for interviews. She was not promoted as a modern face. She was kept in the shadows deliberately. But shadows do not erase pain. Sources close to both families recall the constant conflict. At William's wedding in 2011, Laura was visibly present, standing alongside Camilla and Tom. Yet no press outlet labeled her correctly. Photographers captured her. Editors cropped her. Her very body was cut out of the record. That's not a coincidence. That's control. And yet Laura had a life, one that could never align with the royal family. She pursued art. She became a gallery curator, co-founder of 11, a gallery in London. Her work earned respect in the art world. But even here, her name was filtered. She was introduced as Camilla's daughter, rather than her own person. When she married Harry Lopes, the media identified her primarily as the stepdaughter of Prince Charles. Never Laura, the curator. Always Laura, the appendage. But here lies the cruelty. She was punished for being inconvenient. punished for reminding the world that Charles and Camilla had lived before their romance was legitimized. The monarchy thrives on reinvention, but reinvention requires amnesia. And Laura was living proof of a past the Windsors wanted forgotten. But make no mistake, the erasure was selective. She was not banned from the family. She attended Sandringham Christmases. She was at funerals and jubilees. The monarchy never denied her existence outright. That would be too suspicious. Instead, they perfected the subtler cruelty. Keep her present, but never acknowledged. Visible, but not named. Alive, but erased. It's the same tactic used on other inconvenient women. Think of Princess Margaret's lover, Peter Townsend, exiled into obscurity. Think of Diana's most damning tapes, suppressed and softened until the edges dulled. The royalty does not need to kill. It only needs to erase enough that the record bends to its will. For Laura, the personal cost was heavy. Imagine watching your mother marry into the most powerful family in Britain, yet being told you are not part of that power. Imagine being in photographs, but never in history books. Imagine knowing that your stepbrothers, William and Harry, will one day rule England at the world stage, while you are edited out like a stain. The palace calls this protection. But protection for whom? Not Laura. Protection for Camilla. Protection for Charles. Protection for the institution. Every omission, every cropped headline, every edited photograph was not about Laura's safety. It was about survival of the myth. And yet, there is a deeper secret here, one darker than erasure. Because Laura wasn't just minimized, she was used. In the years when Camilla's reputation teetered on collapse, Laura became a bargaining chip. Her silence became leverage. She was pressed into the role of ghost daughter, not only to keep her out of sight, but to keep Camilla's path to the throne clear. Until now, you would have realized something. What happened to her was torture. Imagine you being in her place, being forced to erase yourself every morning. Erasure is cruel. Exploitation is diabolical. And Laura Parker Bowles wasn't simply forgotten, she was sacrificed. When the Camilla Gate tape exploded in 1993, the monarchy suffered a humiliation so grotesque it nearly toppled Charles's future as king. The public heard the raw intimacy of Charles and Camilla's affair, complete with Charles's most infamous fantasy, his wish to be reincarnated as her tampon. It was obscene, humiliating, and deeply human, everything a monarch is not supposed to be. Camilla's children were old enough to hear the whispers, old enough to understand what it meant. And Laura, still in her teens, became a liability. Reporters prowled for photographs, for quotes, for slips of the tongue. The palace recognized the risk. Camilla's daughter could embarrass the monarchy simply by existing. So they tightened the leash. After the divorce between Charles and Diana in 1996, the strategy became ruthless. Charles was determined to elevate Camilla. The courtiers, led by his spin doctor, Mark Bolland, crafted a plan to normalize her. And in that plan, Laura was silenced by design. Her absence became a condition for her mother's ascent. Look at the timeline. Camilla's public reintroduction came in stages. She appeared at private family events, then carefully at public charity galas. Every move was scripted, but Laura was not part of those scripts. When Camilla faced vicious headlines calling her a marriage wrecker, Laura did not speak. When Diana's Panorama interview tore open the affair, Laura did not defend her mother. She was invisible because invisibility was demanded. The palace understood this. One candid word from Laura, one visible display of pain or defiance, could have reignited Diana's ghost and sunk Camilla forever. So Laura's silence was policed. Friends of the family recall how carefully she was managed. Invitations were filtered, press access was blocked. The message was clear: stay out of sight or you destroy your mother. But the exploitation didn't stop there. Laura became a prop when it suited them. At William's wedding in 2011, her presence was stage-managed to signal family unity. But the press was told not to emphasize her identity. She was used as a backdrop, never the subject. She had to stand in the photograph, but never in the narrative. That is exploitation, to exist only when the monarchy finds you useful, and to vanish when you become inconvenient. Her brother Tom Parker Bowles was treated differently. He was allowed interviews, book deals, television appearances. He was spun as witty, charismatic, even a little roguish, traits the monarchy could laugh off. But Laura was too quiet, too poised, too reflective. Those qualities made her dangerous. A quiet woman who sees too much is the last thing the Windsors want. And beneath this suppression ran another layer: the fights with William. Reports confirm the hostility between them. William, carrying Diana's grief like a scar, lashed out. Laura, carrying her own humiliation, fired back. The quote that surfaced, "Your father has ruined my life," is not just teenage rage. It's a truth spoken aloud in a system built on lies. That truth could not be allowed to spread. So their hostility was buried. Their conflict became another secret. This is how the monarchy operates, not by solving problems, but by burying them under silence and spectacle. Diana was silenced by isolation. Meghan was silenced by bullying. Laura was silenced by omission. Different methods, same result. Erase the woman before she can speak against the crown. But Laura's silence was more than passive. It was weaponized. In the years before Charles and Camilla's marriage, the palace spun a narrative of family healing. They talked about Camilla's children being supportive, understanding, private. In reality, they were gagged. Laura's quietness was twisted into evidence of loyalty. Her absence from headlines was reframed as proof of discretion. She was not seen as a victim of control, but as a dutiful daughter playing her role. The brilliance and the brutality of this tactic is that it turned suppression into propaganda. The palace didn't just silence Laura, they made her silence serve them. Meanwhile, Laura built a life outside the crown. She pursued her art, her marriage, her children. She tried to construct normalcy. But normalcy in this context is another prison. Every time her gallery opened an exhibition, reporters introduced her as Camilla's daughter. Every step she took professionally was shackled to the monarchy she had no control over. Imagine that: to work, to breathe, to exist, and still be branded by a system that erased you. The public never saw Laura's pain, and that was the point. They were never meant to, because if the public had seen her pain, they might have questioned the price of Camilla's throne. They might have asked who was sacrificed to cleanse the royal image, and the answer would have been Laura. But secrets rot in silence, and one secret has begun to seep. Because Laura was not entirely erased, she was not entirely quiet. In rare, hushed circles, whispers surfaced of what she kept: letters, memories, records from the days when her mother was despised, when Charles was mocked, when the palace scrambled to survive the scandal. Laura, the ghost, may have carried proof that the monarchy's rebirth was built not on forgiveness, but on coercion. Got it, boss? Here's the final part. Part 4, approximately 900 words, the reveal, the venom, and the ending that doesn't let the viewer breathe until the last word. This is where all the threads snap tight. Laura's silence, Camilla Gate, and the hidden receipts she may have kept. The monarchy thrives on illusions, but illusions always leave traces, and Laura Parker Bowles may be the trace the crown could never fully erase. For decades, Laura was presented as invisible, the polite stepdaughter who never spoke out, the daughter who chose private life. But silence that perfect is never natural. It is manufactured. And when silence is manufactured, there is always something worth hiding. The rumors start small. A claim in aristocratic circles that Laura kept old letters written by her mother during the darkest years of the scandal. Letters Camilla wrote when Charles was still trapped in his marriage to Diana, when Camilla Gate tore through the tabloids, when both her reputation and her children's futures hung by a thread. These weren't love notes. They were survival notes, fragments of conversations with courtiers, records of how the family was handled, how reputations were managed. Now imagine what such letters would mean. Proof that Laura was silenced, not out of respect, but as part of a bargain. Evidence that Camilla's children were offered as collateral to secure her eventual acceptance. Receipts showing the monarchy didn't rehabilitate Camilla out of forgiveness, but out of control. The thought alone is enough to explain the machinery around Laura. Why she was cut out of official mentions. Why her conflicts with William were buried. Why her own professional achievements were smothered under the title Camilla's daughter. If Laura held the record of how the bargain was struck, then her silence wasn't just convenient, it was essential. And then there is Harry, the son who finally broke free. When Harry accused the institution of sacrificing members of the family to protect others, the world assumed he was talking about Meghan. But listen carefully. His words carried a broader truth. The crown does not protect everyone equally. It decides who must be fed to the fire so the image survives. Meghan was only the latest. Laura was one of the first. In Harry's war with the monarchy, Laura's shadow remains. Harry attended her wedding. He knew her. He saw how she was treated. He grew up in the same halls where she was a ghost. To him, the pattern was obvious. What happened to Laura was what would later happen to Meghan. Omission, exploitation, silence. The crown simply recycled its cruelty with a new victim. But here's the darkest twist. Laura never rebelled. She never leaked, never spoke, never exposed. Her silence held. Whether by choice, by loyalty, or by quiet threat, she remained the ghost the monarchy required. And that silence itself is the secret that screams. Because silence that heavy is never clean. Silence that absolute is evidence of pressure, evidence of a deal. The monarchy's survival depends on people like Laura. People erased so completely the public forgets to ask about them. People who carry secrets they can never release. And every time the crown hides someone like her, it rewrites its own sins. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Laura's life proves the monarchy does not simply forget. It selects, it edits, it cuts. Laura was not invisible because she had nothing to say. She was invisible because what she could say might have burned the house down. The ghost sister at Sandringham, the cropped-out woman in photographs, the silent witness to Camilla Gate's fallout. Her absence is not just absence, it's testimony. A testimony that the monarchy keeps buried because it reveals the cost of its survival. And the cost is always a human being. Diana, Meghan, Margaret, Laura, different eras, same machinery. Silence them, edit them, erase them, until the crown stands unchallenged. But in erasing Laura, the monarchy created a paradox. Ghosts cannot be killed. They linger, they haunt. And the more the palace tries to erase her, the louder her silence becomes. What if the proof still exists? What if Laura's letters are real, tucked away in some drawer, or safe, waiting? What if one day they surface, not from Laura herself, but from her children, her friends, her estate? What if the receipts of silence come to light, exposing the bargain that crowned Camilla? The monarchy fears ghosts, because ghosts don't die, and Laura is the ghost they cannot exorcise. In the end, the true scandal isn't just that the monarchy erased Laura Parker Bowles. The true scandal is why. To protect Camilla, to rehabilitate Charles, to safeguard the image of a crown already rotting from within. Laura never asked for a throne. She never asked for a title, but she became the price her mother paid to sit beside Charles. The world forgot her. The crown erased her. And that is the secret that damns them. Their survival has always demanded a sacrifice. Laura Parker Bowles was that sacrifice, and her silence, still unbroken, may yet be the loudest scream the monarchy has ever tried to bury.